welcome to our pod. And by that, I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. Right now, we forgot to talk about what our mini-series would be
What
called.
was our miniseries name? Whoops. We voted. I can't remember.
No, I think we picked another one because we both liked certain ones.
Whoops. Wow, we are great at organization.
This is so bad. We're not professional at all. I apologize. It's been a week. Like we were trying, both of us got a miscommunication on how many chapters we were supposed to read.
I was like, oh yeah, we're only through chapter 36. I'm there. And Hannah was like, let's stop at chapter 38. And I was like, well, that's not happening. We're gonna have to stop at 36.
So we've just been like having the worst day. It's a Monday, guys, that we're recording this.
Yeah,
and
we're recording on Monday. It's been a Monday of a Monday.
It's been the biggest Monday of the Monday. So I think we were going to name it we're so professional right now. I think we were thinking about doing cycling through Legendborn or becoming Legendborn, but I kind of like cycling through Legendborn.
I kind of like cycling. Yeah.
Okay, so we're cycling through Legendborn right now, guys. So welcome to the
thanks for the
miniseries
suggestions,
where we read Legendborn by Tracy Deonn, and we have miscommunications about how many chapters we needed you guys to read. It's to chapter 36.
This book sends you for a loop. Like, you know that Charlie Day meme from him on It's Always Sunny, where there's all the like strings and everything. He's trying to figure this thing out, and he's like turned around and he looks all wild and everything. That's kind of how this is when you're trying to figure everything out in Legendborn.
There are so many moments where I'm like, I should be taking notes, but I'm not going to. It's going to be vibes only.
I'm honestly getting a little confused with like the different like whose page belongs to or whose scion is.
Well, and they make too many nicknames. So Felicity is also Flick and Russ is Russ because, of course, you can't give Russ a nickname. And then you have, I'm sure he's Russell, though. And then you have Sarah and Tor who are together because they had to shorten their names. You had to do it.
Yes.
And Tor dated Cell, but don't talk about it. And it's just, it's very confusing.
That was during her rebellious phase.
I mean, Cell is, we'll talk about it, but
we'll get there.
Laura, before we cycle through Legendborn, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
So Hannah, I just told you like off the air that I have really just not had a lot of brain space for anything except TV. And I tried reading some manga. I was reading The Way of the House Husband, and let me look up who actually wrote that because it's cute and they deserve the credit. So The Way of the House Husband, I read volumes 1 through 3 because that's all my library had available at the moment. It is written and I'm assuming illustrated also by Kousuke Oono, and it's a really cute manga. I would say that if you like Spy Family, this is very similar, where you have a former tough guy that has given up his ways and has become a house husband where his wife is working and he's doing all the things that are stereotypical housewife things. He's doing the laundry and he's going to Pilates, and it's really a cute spin on how men and women are treated differently in these roles and how he is kind of feared because people know his past and know him as a former kind of gangster. So it's really cute, and I kind of like these stories like this where they're super low stakes, and it's just like we're watching in one volume him go to the grocery store, and then he's getting ready for a birthday party, and then he's hanging out with his friend, and then he's doing some laundry, and then he's cleaning the house, and then he's becoming obsessed with a rice cooker. Like this is it requires no thinking for me, and it's just fun to read and look at. So I really enjoyed those. But the thing that I have been like, Hannah, it has been an emotional roller coaster, and I'm loving it so much.
This book? No. Sorry.
No.
What are you talking about?
I do love this book, but The Last of Us on HBO Max. Did you watch it?
Okay, so I've only watched like the first couple episodes because I was watching it with my former roommate, and I haven't seen it all. So I do want to watch it so badly to like finish it, but I've only watched the first 3 episodes, so don't
Oh, you've watched the
ruin
first
anything.
three?
Yeah, I think I've watched at least the first three, I want to
So you
say.
saw Nick Offerman.
Oh, I haven't seen Nick Offerman yet.
Okay,
No.
so then you've only watched the first two.
Okay, I've only watched the first two.
Okay, I will keep the spoiler free, but I will say that this conversation is timely because Nick Offerman just won a creative arts Emmy for his portrayal of that character as a guest, the supporting actor, supporting guest actor in this series. This show is post-apocalyptic. There are zombies.
It's
There
based on
is
a
a
video game.
It's based on a video game, The Last of Us. There's a fungal infection that has spread through seemingly food products of some sort. Good time to be gluten free because they're thinking it was in wheat products. They don't know for sure, but they this fungal infection uh, basically creates a chokehold on the brains of these people and creates zombies. There's different forms of these zombies. There's runners, and then there's clickers, and there's all sorts of different forms of these zombies. But then because this fungal infection has spread so much, there are quarantine zones and there are places where people are trying to get to. There are very few like safe spaces because even within the QZs, there are zombies that appear. But and they don't call them zombies, they call them infected.
Right.
But this show, I don't know what I was expecting. I think I was expecting more of like the horror, like, oh my gosh, wow, like zombies. This show focuses more on the horror of the people's situations and what got them to this place and the emotions involved, and very much less on the actual zombie horror part of it. Like it is horrifying. There's a lot of violence and a lot of like scary things that happen in this.
Yeah.
But the more horrific part, I think, and the more gripping part of this show is how the emotions of the characters play through and how you can watch people who have literally dedicated their lives to a thing or a person see that thing or person change or leave them. And it is devastating. And I episodes 3, 4, and 5, especially, like I sobbed through them. There were so many things happening in those episodes that were just gut-wrenching. And once you know about once you've kind of set it up with episodes 1 and 2, and then you get into 3, 4, and 5, there's just so many emotions involved in what these characters must be dealing with in their situations that when you're seeing the episode play out, it's heartbreaking. Like episode 3, sobbed uncontrollably through that one. Then we get into the next 2 episodes and emotions are really, really high. And some shocking things happened, honestly. Like episode 5, I was really surprised by a couple of things that happened. And I want to say that this show shouldn't have been like predictable, but I was kind of thinking it was going to be predictable. And just kudos. I was tempted to even like get into gaming when I was watching this. I'm like, this show is so good.
Laura
Like,
and
I would pick up a video game for this.
2024 is the year that Hannah and Laura finally do a deep dive into video games. We pick the most random ones. I'm a Zelda aficionado. Laura is into The Last of Us video game. Is that what it's called? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's called The Last of Us.
Perfect.
But I would have to buy a gaming system and everything, and I just don't feel like doing that. But if I were to ever get my hands on a gaming system somehow, The Last of Us would probably be the first game I'd be picking up. But yeah, this is a post-apocalyptic situation, and we're following the characters of Ellie and Joel. Joel is trying to get Ellie across the country to another like militia group who is trying to kind of fight against the government because in a situation like this, the government immediately becomes like totalitarian.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like, okay, of course.
Great.
Which kind of makes sense, but considering the circumstances. But yeah, Ellie is one of the, if not the only person that they know of who has become immune to this fungal infection. And so it is key that they're trying to move her from the QZ where they're at over in Boston over across the country to another militia group who's going to try and come up with a cure, because they're seeing that is basically their only way of getting out of this government situation that they're in, is that if they find a cure and they can get people to be able to like become infected but not get sick and become zombies, then maybe they'll have a way to get out of this situation, because the other things they've been doing have not worked and there's really no good way to get out of their situation. But Hannah, this show, uh, just I think about it all the time. Like I watched one of the episodes and I just like sat there. I stopped the TV and I just like sat there in silence for a while because it was just like, what just happened? Am I okay? Like,
is this okay? Like, yeah.
What's going on? Like, what? It's phenomenal, and I'm shocked that. So I guess at the Golden Globes and the Creative Arts Emmys that The Bear did really well, which well deserved. But I'm shocked that The Last of Us is not getting more awards because this show is so well done, so well done. Oh, I can't wait for you to watch it.
I know we need to do it for like a TV Tuesday because we want to start doing this more often, sporadically throughout the year. And I feel like The Last of Us is like perfect.
Cry with me.
I can cry, Laura. I do it all the time.
Yeah, who would have thought like a zombie show that you would be sobbing in? And I don't know as far as like the game how close it is to the game or anything, but what a phenomenal cast that they have gotten for this. Like the actors are just great. Oh, so good. The actor who portrays Ellie, they are fantastic. I can't get over
amazing.
I can't get over what a great actor they are, because I don't even know how old they are. They're like they got to be in their teens.
They're 20 now.
18? Oh,
okay. They're 20 now, but they were 18 when they started, I believe, because I started last year, so they were 19 when it started. They are very young looking.
Yeah, Bella Ramsey is their name, I think, right?
They're in Bella Ramsey.
Okay.
I think that they go by Bella Ramsey. So, I guess yeah.
And Pedro Pascal obviously is in that from The Mandalorian fame.
Of course. Well, and they were also in Game of Thrones. So
yeah. Pedro and Bella were both in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
So call back. But yeah, this show is phenomenal. I would love to have some people come on and talk about this with us. That would be great. But I'll cry the whole time because I just will.
I hope everyone likes tears.
Yeah. And I'm an ugly crier too, so this would not be pleasant for anyone. So Hannah, what have you been reading and watching?
So I haven't been on a super TV kick. Like I feel like I'm rewatching a lot of stuff lately. A lot of like I fell asleep to Castle lately, so that's been going on.
I haven't watched that in forever.
It doesn't age well. I don't like Castle upon rewatch. Like there's just some stuff that's
come
out. I
could guess that.
Yeah, and there's stuff that's come out about Nathan Fillion about that show that like kind of bums me out when I watch it. But it's easy to fall asleep to because like it just nothing like that. But like he is kind of a jerk. It sounds like, and like the actress who played, Beckett was like kind of ostracized pretty harshly on that show. It sounds like, to the point where like she wasn't enjoying her time. She was pretty open about it, and then they like before it got canceled, they tried to kill her off.
What?
When she's like a mainstay of the show, and
she's like
the
other main character,
right? And I guess like we haven't gotten that far. I guess spoilers for Castle, but my partner told me that like at one point he disappears for years and he comes back, and they kind of ruined the Beckett character because she like blames him for disappearing. He's putting more fire on my fireplace right now, and he's just nodding his head. Yeah, so like I feel like the main director and Nathan Fillion didn't like this actress, and they kind of just ruined Beckett's character because of it. I don't know how much control Nathan Fillion had about that.
Kind of similar to like when Kevin James started a new show, and everyone was like, he had better chemistry with Leah Remini.
And so they killed off his wife. They
killed off his wife and brought in
Leah Remini. Right? Which, yeah, I don't know. Whatever. But like, I do think that Nathan Fillion probably is not the nicest of people. So that sometimes when I'm watching, I'm like, that bums me out. But then I just fall asleep.
Bad
so it's
fine.
I
was just like, oh no, what is there? And then when you're like, he's kind of a jerk, I'm like, oh, at least he's just like a jerk about it. Get my coffee order and we're gonna get you fired.
That's, oh my gosh. So there's this author that my partner, I can name him on the podcast. He's on our Discord. Paul picked up and Paul was like reading it and he's like, oh, I really like the world building in these books. They're so nice. And then I was scrolling on TikTok and Critter XD had a video about like author T you didn't know about. It was all about how this author was terrible and like he fostered children and like physically and like emotionally abused them. Like he locked them in cages and he and his wife went to prison for it. So good. And he's dead now. And my partner was like, I was like, oh, guess what? This one author is not great. And I told him, but he was like, is it bad? That I was like, at least he didn't sexually abuse them.
That's like, what like, I was thinking when you were like, your mind goes.
Yeah. So there's just moments where you're like, oh, thank God that it's only something. And it's like,
at least it's only embezzlement. At least it's only getting people fired. At least
it's only that.
Why?
But my partner on our first one of our first dates, we were talking and something was said about Sean Connery and he goes, oh, Sean Connery never done a bad thing in his life. And I paused and I was like, he beat his wife, Paul.
Oh my gosh.
Like, oh my gosh, what?
We can't learn info about anyone.
I was like, I'm pretty sure he beat his wife, and we looked it up and it was very much true.
Oh my gosh.
I got on the record. So
honestly, at this point, I'm putting so many hopes and dreams into Michael J. Fox to just continue to be a good person. Like if it ever comes out like bad things about him, I'm gonna be so devastated. Like, oh. And I'm trying hard not to like put feelings, like attach feelings to celebrities anymore because you find out that, you know what, they're people and a lot of them are bad people. So
I know. I did hear, I was listening to a podcast called Majority 54. And one of them was talking about Jimmy Kimmel. And he's like, Jimmy Kimmel is a very nice person, guys. He's like, I know him personally. And he's a veteran who is heavily active in politics, and he was running for Senate until he dropped out of the race due to PTSD issues. His mental health was not okay, and he was like, I need to drop out of this race. I can't do this. And now he hosts this podcast, or he was hosting the podcast at the time. He still is. But he was like, for a while, he was working to get Afghan refugees out of Afghanistan who had helped become translator, like them and their families when there was crisis there. And apparently he texted Jimmy Kimmel and he was like, hey, I have to raise like $400,000 by the end of the day. Like, would you be willing to give anything? And he was like, within a minute, he texted like, me and my wife are down for 50,000. Give my name to everyone you talk to today. And he was like, and people heard what he was willing to give. And he was like, they were like, we'll give half of what he gave. We'll give the X amount. So like they used him as like an anchoring.
Kind
of
a launch pad.
Yeah. And he was like, so Jimmy Kimmel is a very nice person. Because apparently Aaron Rodgers said some not nice things about Jimmy Kimmel.
Aaron Rodgers.
I know.
Why does anyone give Aaron Rodgers any kind of airtime or like talk to him? Because this guy was drinking mud a year ago. Him and Shailene Woodley were drinking mud for their health.
Never forget, every time Shailene Woodley's name gets mentioned, eating clay has to be mentioned right afterwards.
Aaron Rodgers is right there.
I know.
And people are like, oh, well, remember how when his brother was on The Bachelor, everyone was like, how come you don't ever talk to Aaron Rodgers? And it's like, well, we're learning why now.
That's fair. I'm a huge Packers fan, and even I'm like, let's put our heads down at the fact that we once liked Aaron Rodgers. It's fine. And I do remember
not with your team anymore, so
he's not. So I'm in the clear. But I remember one time I was living in DC, and one of the guys who I was living with was like, you love the Packers? You love Aaron Rodgers? He's like, that guy, he like lived in the same area that Aaron Rodgers lived off season. And he was like, that guy comes in and hits on college girls during the year. It's like, oh, gross.
Yeah, that ain't right.
Anyway,
Yeah,
so
Aaron
many
Rodgers has been
tangents.
going for Jimmy Kimmel weirdly, and
Yeah, and
Jimmy
Jimmy
was immediately
Kimmel
like,
is just like,
"Nope,
nope,
don't
get
do
out
that.
of here. And
I
so
will
the
sue
guy
you."
was just like, Jimmy Kimmel is very nice, everyone. He helps refugees. He's very
I'm
sweet. And I was like, well,
That's
thank
good
you
to
for that.
hear. I like
So
hearing that about people that they're actually like donating and doing
I know.
things and
So
decent.
I know, but
What
lots of
else, Hannah?
tangents to say that I was falling asleep to Castle, and I have Peacock right now, the
Oh,
commercial
yes.
version. But Peacock has seasons 13 through like 30 of regular Law and Order, which I prefer to Law and Order SVU. So I have switched over to the better Law and
Did you ever
Order.
watch Law and Order Criminal Intent?
No, I
Because that has Vincent, how do you say his name?
D'Onofrio.
D'Onofrio. Thank you. And I really like that actor.
I think I've seen episodes probably here and there because again, my dad and I specifically, whenever I'm home, just turn on Law and Order because you can find it on
Mhm.
any effing channel on
Yeah.
satellite dish. And so he and I will just watch hours of Law and Order to the point where my partner's been watching some Law and Order with me. And he's like, do you tell your dad you do this? And I was like, why would I do that? Like it's just
Here's the thing, there's
normal.
something about that show, like those Law and Order shows, that once you look at the TV when they're on, somehow 3 hours have passed. I
Dude,
don't know what it is. Like my husband can be in the other room and he can hear dun dun,
dun,
and
dun,
he
dun,
like
dun, dun.
meanders in,
Yeah.
and then he's sitting, and then we've watched 3 episodes of Law and Order.
At
I
one point,
don't know what it is about that show.
it was like 3 minutes and we had to let whiskey out. And Paul was like, oh, just let me know what happens at the end. And I was like, I can pause it.
Yeah, like just pause the show.
But it's one of those things where I feel like people inherently are like, Law and Order, super interesting, cannot be paused. You are
Yeah.
just going to miss what you're going to miss. You leave the room, you come back,
And
you
you know
accept
what?
where you're at.
I think that's fine.
I
I think
think
that
that
we can
that's fine.
accept that that's one of those shows that you don't
You
need to
can
see all of
miss
it.
5 to 30 minutes of that show
Yeah,
and
you
pretty
don't need
much
to see
be
it.
okay.
Hmm.
Which is also why I fall asleep to Castle all the time. The next night, I'm like,
Yeah.
who was the murderer? I don't really care about what other
Honestly,
storylines.
like a lot of like police shows like that, I feel like you can kind of jump in and out of them
Yeah.
fairly easily.
Like you're just like, what? That's always remember that was like certain SVU episodes. I was like, they were so off the wall because at the beginning of the episode you'd be watching one thing and at the end you're like, what just happened? And
Like
that's
if
why
they
that
cut
show
out
doesn't
all of
work.
like the BS with like, you know what? I'm gonna go against the rules. And it's like, Elliot, no. And, except they
Elliot,
never
you're
say Elliot, no.
Elliot, you're a good cop. No, you're not. You were never a good cop.
You're a great cop and a great husband.
No,
No.
you're neither of those things. So I've been mostly doing
Uh,
rewatches of stuff. I've been watching a lot of like procedurals. It's
mhm.
nice because I don't know. I like to play games and I like to multitask, and I feel like I'm learning how to live with other people. So this is just me. I did a puzzle this week for the first time in a
Oh,
long
what was it a
time.
picture of?
Well, it was with my roommate, and it was of national parks.
Okay.
So it was all these various national
Like
parks.
several national parks.
Yeah, like little insignias of the national
Okay,
parks.
cool,
So it
cool,
was like
cool.
little paintings and stuff. And I'm not a puzzle person, but I like stopped and I was like, oh, that's the same circle. And then 2.5 hours later, I was texting you last night going, can we record tomorrow? I don't feel like recording.
Here's the thing. I desperately want to be one of those people who just like listens to an audiobook and does a puzzle. But for some
Mm.
reason, like it doesn't work with my brain. Like I can walk and do an audiobook. I can do
Yeah.
dishes and do an audiobook, clean and do an audiobook. I even work while listening to
Yeah.
audiobooks, and it just doesn't mess with me. What happens in my brain when there is a puzzle? I have to have complete silence
I
practically.
yeah, I feel like with puzzles you have to have like it's a logical thing. Like you're using like
Or like low
spatial.
music. I can't even
Yeah.
have like music with words.
It's like spatial recognition plus like moving
Yeah.
shapes plus like there's enough there. And I'm not a huge puzzle person, but I got sucked in for a long time
Mhm.
and I left a bear to the end and the bears really pissed me off at the end. And you
Mhm.
also get a weird vendetta against certain portions of the puzzle where you're
Yes.
like, why isn't my
Yes.
brain computing with this? So I did a puzzle this week. That was nice. Go get
That's
a
fun.
national parks
We
puzzle.
occasionally will get a puzzle and do it for a date night.
Oh, Paul would never. He
Oh,
hates
really?
puzzles. He walked in and he said, oh, you guys are doing a puzzle. that's nice, and left the room.
Well, it takes all kinds of kinds.
He's colorblind.
Oh, yeah, that would be difficult.
He's colorblind, and like he's very specific in instructions. So if you mess with too many of those things, he's like, I can't do this. I need to leave.
I feel like my husband is like the perfect person for puzzles, honestly, because his brain is like he's a mechanic, so his brain just works in that way of like putting things back together after they've been taken apart. Only like it's his job to do it in a more complicated manner.
Yeah.
So when we're doing a puzzle, it's like his perfect thing because it's stuff that works well with his brain chemistry. And then he also is just like a very quiet, laid back person who's not going to get upset about these things. Like, oh, I can't, like you just said, you get mad at a certain section. That is me. I will, like, if I get too mad at a puzzle, like I have a 2,000 piece puzzle that I have had for a couple of years, and I'll get like a quarter of the way into it and get frustrated and just give up on it and put it back in the box. But he would never do that. So I think there's a special place for puzzle people. They're not
It's not
they're
for
not
everyone.
that common. Yeah. We have a friend who does puzzles and frames them.
Yeah, no, Paul's sister was like, I might frame this. And I was like, that's nice.
Cool.
My sister's a puzzle person. She loves a good puzzle. I did it yesterday. I don't think I will pick up another puzzle for at least 5 years. So,
someday I would love to be that person. Like if I could have like enough space to like have one of those special tables, with like the slide out things to like have a puzzle going and then be like that audiobook person that listens to the audiobook and does the puzzle. It will never happen, but it's a dream.
We have a custom gaming table that we did it on. Like it had felt underneath it. So we did it on the felt table, but it did make the pieces hard to move when we needed to.
Yeah.
And you cannot count the number of times I sang Winston's about to do some puzzling. And said, it's a Japanese garden, Winston. The picture's on the box. That part was really fun.
Some people will not look at the picture on the box.
Hey Schmidt, what do you think this picture will be of? What are you talking about?
It's in hard mode.
So anyway, but for books I've been reading, back in November, I read Betting on You by Lynn Painter. It is also a YA romance that I got from like a book club insider group for Simon and Schuster. This was adorable. I very much enjoyed it. It's like it was very funny because at the beginning there's a scene that's directly pulled from When Harry Met Sally, and I was like, oh, is this just like a new version of When Harry Met Sally? And then in the book they're like, he's like, we met kind of like When Harry Met Sally, and I was like, it's not that. Okay.
And then they just left it there.
They just kind of left it there, not like we met exactly like Harry and Sally meet in the airplane after many years. It's just like, nope, they're just gonna call attention to it and walk away.
I love that, honestly.
I was like, cool, having fun. But like they have a direct conversation where he's like, boys and girls can't be friends. And he's like, I saw it in a movie once. And I was like, sir, you're just being Billy Crystal. What are you doing?
Honestly, I really like When Harry Met Sally. I'm a sucker for that movie.
That's fair. I I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was very cute. It's very nice because it talks a lot about like both of their parents are divorced, and like they're like one of their parents is like not quite in the picture anymore. The main character Bailey had to move away for her mom to like move to Omaha instead of like living in Alaska where her dad is located. And there's a lot about like the loss of when you're a teenager of like losing certain things due to divorce. And I liked that because I feel like, I don't know, it feels like a divorce got talked a lot about when we were growing up, but I don't see it a ton in books anymore for kids that have like a different perspective, because when we were growing up, it was always like, well, your parents still love you. And that was kind of the end of the message.
Here's the thing. I feel like it's brought up in middle grade books.
Maybe that's true.
And I don't know that I see it in any other books.
But it was nice to see like teenagers have to deal with that. And like,
is this a YA?
It's a YA novel.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay.
I should have said that. It's a YA romance. And I liked that it was like two teenagers kind of dealing with that, where they're like dealing with idiosyncrasies. One of them decides not to text their dad to see how long it takes for him to text her. and it's been months, and she kind of has like a breakdown about it during the book, and it's like, oh, this is horrible, and it's like talking about how sometimes parents can fail you, and there's like a lot of stuff that like goes unsaid. I would say there were parts of the book that I didn't love, mostly like how her mom is handling a new romantic relationship, where it's like her mom doesn't feel like she's communicating well with her daughter. But other than that, I thought it was a very cute romance. It went on for a little bit too long. It's like over 400 pages, and I was like,
oh
look,
wow, that is kind of long.
I can't read about these high schoolers liking each other anymore. I need this to be done and them to be get together. But
That is very fair.
I really liked it overall. I thought like there's certain things that you see in YA books. The same thing is happening with Legendborn, where you read it and you're like, oh, we're not over this yet. So like,
Yeah,
boy reads real books like Murakaki, and girl reads Sarah J. Maas. And it's like, why can't we just like, can't boys like stupid books too? Like, does it always have to be
sure.
like, boys are so smart and read good literature, and women have to teach them that girl things are good too? And I'm like, well, I don't really care about this that much, and I don't care for it, because like there are different types of books for everyone. Like boys read weird sci-fi books all the time. Just let them read a weird sci-fi book and let them have those types of interests, where it's like,
Sure.
quote unquote, one's reading capital L literature and the other one isn't. I don't love that. But overall, I thought it was a very good book and very cute. So that's one of the books that I read, watched, and or enjoyed last year, because I haven't read much this week. Well, I have been reading this week. I just haven't finished anything this week.
Sure.
So, but shall we cycle into Legend?
Get into the cycle.
Oh my gosh, this book has so much whiplash. And
oh my gosh,
guys, like 30% of it is Selwyn Kane running into a room, screaming and leaving.
At what point, Hannah, did you start to go down we're getting into Jacob and Edward territory? Because I started that within this section.
Okay, no, I kind of always knew that it was headed that way, but like I also didn't care.
I didn't want to believe it. I think I was in denial, where I was just like, no, Sel's not going to be a thing.
Can I do
but
like
he definitely becomes one.
Tiniest spoiler of all the world that you haven't read because you didn't get to chapter 39? Dang it. We'll have to wait till next week then. But I don't care for Selwyn Kane and his screaming. And I understand.
But he's under so much pressure.
The way Bree forgives him automatically, because she's like, he had a bad upbringing, and it's like he was still raised. Yes, he was raised in really.
But once you know the background info, aren't you like?
Is it his screaming at her and telling her she's evil and deserves to die?
Aren't you more sympathetic?
No,
once you know that he's got. Yeah,
Laura,
I'm not, but
we have to talk about this theme next or in 2 weeks. But like, this is like just showing off the blatant people who are treating other people badly, and it's like that's not acceptable, especially when there are different dynamics, like a white man and a black woman. Like, it's different, and it's not okay to treat people like that. But Selwyn Kane does it time and time again, just screams at her all the time. So we did leave off on chapter 18, which is where our miscommunication lay, because we leave off with Bree's therapist, who goes on in this section to never treat Bree once for any of her depression and or anxiety. She just becomes her Yoda for a little bit, and then she's like, I think I'm out.
She finds out something and is like, we have to pursue this because I'm really curious about it. And she even admits that she should not have gone down this path as her therapist. And then she's like, you know what? Gotta go.
But I'm way more interested in doing that and treading over all of our boundaries as your therapist.
And you're going to have to find somebody else for that other stuff, because I didn't realize it was as much as you said.
Because I didn't realize I had to be a therapist. Like, that's kind of what she says.
Well, and I'm kind of wondering, like, what did Bree's dad say to Patricia? Like, because what was the conversation there?
I don't know. But like, Patricia has very little of like, hey, yes, I've seen my dead sister once upon a time. I don't think you'd be ready to see your dead mother because you have a different relationship. It's always like, she may not want to see you yet. And it's
She
like,
may she may reveal herself to you. She may not. We are not in control of that. And it's like,
as someone who was obsessed with the TV show Charmed, when they kicked off Shannon Doherty, they like in the show they had a very specific thing where you could see ghosts sometimes, but they had fired Shannon Doherty, so they couldn't see that ghost ever. So they just had a rule where they were like, look, it takes a while to grieve a sister. She's not coming down here until you can do that. That was just like an overarching, like, no, you guys are too close. And doing that would stop your grieving process. So she is going to remain away from you for a long time. And I was like, that's a great, it's a great tie-in to the TV show. It explains the world. Like, they lost their mother and grandmother years ago. They had processed a lot of their grief before they saw them again. Like, great. Can't do it for that one sister. I'm like, Patricia, just say that to her. Be like, you cannot process the grief of your mother while returning to her.
Bree's doing a lot of internal processing though, because she's even like coming to realizations like, oh yeah, like none of the women in my family met their grandmothers. Like that is bad. Like we didn't have any of this generational knowledge to pass on to each other. And so I could be jumping into something like this. And I think that something that really strikes me about this book is how no matter like what situation Bree is in, she's kind of like singled out and alone in her situation. Even when she mentions at one point that being with Patricia, and we'll get to this point soon, that Patricia brings another person to her session. Again, Patricia, what are you doing? Patricia. Anyways, but Bree mentions like this is the most like community that I have felt to like be with people who are like me and have a shared experience and look like me, and she feels comfortable with them. But at the same time, we start to get a little more into this situation, and Bree is once again kind of separated from them. And I just find it fascinating how this plays out in this book, that Bree, no matter where she is at, is kind of othered.
Yep, I agree.
But Patricia, interesting tactics.
Patricia,
I like Patricia, but I'm questioning where she got her license.
I am questioning. I have so many questions in these sessions, but like, so
and another thing happened. We got to get into this.
Okay, I'm so sorry, but
else happened that just
here's okay. This is the introduction to Patricia. Patricia is like, "Oh, your mother is a root practitioner," and then Bria's like, "What is that?" And Patricia immediately goes, "Well, if your mom didn't tell you, she probably had her reasons. I'm not going to tell you either."
I will say that this is fascinating, that this is how Tracy brings this into the story, because like this is based on, I'm assuming, hoodoo. Yeah. And this has like deep cultural roots in Black culture, especially in the South. And I think it's fascinating that she has brought this into this and incorporated this into this Arthurian legend, that there's these kind of dual uses of this magic.
Well, and I love the way she world builds it. I just sometimes question how Patricia teaches breathing.
Patricia, we want to trust you, but you're making it hard. You're supposed to be the trustworthy adult that I love, and you're making it hard for me.
Well, Patricia's like, maybe your mom had her reasons. And Bria's like, I should be able to know what's going on. I have questions. This affects my life. And Patricia goes, fine, I'll tell you. Bria's like, that was like whiplash. And I'm sitting there reading it going, yes, Brie, that was whiplash. And Patricia's like, that's just how I react to things. I'm like, not great in a therapist. Like, oh my gosh. So she tells her that, like, she's gonna reel it in, Patricia. But so Patricia tells Bree that she had a friend in college who like could sense other people's root abilities, and they sensed it in Bree's mom. So Patricia asked if she would like to practice with their community, and she politely declined working with others. She kind of talks about how they can manipulate energy. Everyone has kind of like an aura and a root within them that can kind of like be used and manipulated. Bree asks about ether, and Patricia says that that isn't a word they use. And then she's like, where did you find that? And Bree goes, I'm not going to say where I learned it. And Patricia goes, I respect confidentiality.
But here's the thing. Bree does this several times where she's like, I'm not going to tell this party about this other party because they don't like each other. But then within minutes, she shares with the opposite party about each other.
Well, and also, I'm sorry, if you were living on a campus where there's a magical Arthurian group of people, and Bree was like,
and you have no one to trust,
and you have no one to trust, and Patricia hears Bree go, either. Don't you think you would be like, hey, were you hanging out with those Arthurian legend people? Because it sounds like you were. Like, blink twice if you met Arthur.
Right.
But anyway, she's like, no, like different people use different magic differently. And she says that they call this specific type of, quote unquote, magic root, because she says she doesn't love magic as a term. And so they kind of continue with the session a little bit and just discuss. Later on, Alice invites Bree to dinner because they're friends again. She specifically says that because we're friends again, do you want to go to dinner? She declines and says she joined a secret society. She says,
to which that kind of clears up things for Alice. She's like, oh.
Okay, why did you say so in the first
No questions asked. Okay.
Again, people get logicked out of their arguments all the time in this book so fast. So she's like, oh yeah, Nicholas introduced me to them. And she's like, ooh, I don't like how you said Nicholas in a certain way. You have a big old crush on him. And
Bree's like, no, I don't have a crush.
I don't have a crush. But then she goes up to meet Nick and she's like, I wish she hadn't pointed out my crush. And she meets up with Nick. They see Felicity, who was wakened in the last section. She appears to be very horny in this for Russ, who is her squire. It was just very bizarre where they
were all over each other, and I'm
come out
giggling
by this out of a room, and I'm like, you two are 17-year-olds in a YA novel, and obviously, like, I get it. I'm a 32-year-old woman. They're in college, but like, I looked up some of their ages, and a lot of them are like still 17, and I'm like, I get it. I'm not the audience for this, but I really don't need to see two teenagers coital, like where Russ is like, man, she's gotten really randy, and I'm like, can you guys please not bring attention to the fact that you probably just had sex? Like, I don't need to know. And we
get into this a little bit later, but wouldn't that kind of be against like their rules of the scions and squires like relationships? Like, it happens, but it's also one of those things where it's kind of like taboo a little bit because like, one of you's gonna die at 35 because
I feel
bound to each other.
They kind of say they kind of brush this off with like, it's been over 200 years since like anything has happened with a lot of these people, so like the rules are more like guidelines for a certain elite few, and we've just seen the elite like get brought into this, so they're more likely to break the rules. So I don't know. Nick pulls,
but yes, lots of horny teens.
And apparently Lamorak had a temper, and they like to make out a lot afterwards, and she's also very strong. So Nick pulls Bree into his unused bedroom to talk. He's like, I don't sleep here, but I will for the rest of this book. Which
I'm confused. Why does he have an unused bedroom there? And then how did he bring all his stuff in? Like,
I don't know, but he immediately, like, I understand that he's like, look, I agreed to come back, and now I realize how serious it's gotten. But again, he just like real quick, it's like, you know what? I am King Arthur soon, so I will be doing this. Thank you.
And the way that everybody just immediately is just, again, no questions asked. Yep, he's back.
He's back.
Okay.
He's ready to come in.
At this point, I'm kind of more like, I guess I agree with Cell. What?
I'm Team Will, who's minding his own business with his boyfriend.
Will's like, you gotta date outside of this group. You gotta have a major. You gotta remove yourself as much as you can from this.
You have to try to have a normal life. Even Nick's life wasn't normal. He was just trying to piss off his dad. Nick has like, I have so many questions about it because he immediately is accepted back into the fold. It's like, did you not have friends for many years?
Yeah.
What were you doing outside of this? Were you just sitting in a room in the dark? Because
it makes me think that it's one of those things where it's like he's so privileged within that small community that even though he's like, I'm leaving, it's like all of his friends who are still in the order, they're probably still like hanging out with him and everything.
He's still going to the beer garden with him as a 17-year-old
they're all
child.
Still hanging out, and they're keeping tabs on him and everything and reporting back to Dottie. But we just get Nick and
Except
his
they're in
little
the
temper
South, so
tantrum where
it's
he like
daddy.
stays in a nice dorm.
Sometimes I like to think about how Sal would likely have a Southern accent, and that makes me
I
giggle.
know.
Like in the scheme of this book, he should be
Should we
screaming with a
speak with
Southern
Southern
accent.
accents when we do their voices? I don't.
You're evil.
Which I don't know if I'd have the
You're
right.
Shadowborn.
I don't know if I'd have the right accent for it.
I don't know, but anyway, he asks. I forgot when we started the section because it had been a week since I had read it.
Yeah.
I forgot in the previous section was a section where she got hurt by the shadow like born thing that had come through and attacked Nick. And so he hugs her and I'm like, why is he hugging her? And he's like, I'm really glad you're safe. And I was like, oh, that's why he's hugging her. Blink and you'll miss it, guys. So he asks her to drop out of the race after hugging her because he put her in harm's way. She says, no, she needs this. And she tells him she knows all about his heritage and the lines and all that stuff. And he's like, Will told you? And she's like, well, you probably should have because I signed up to be a page and you gave me zero information. And he's like,
and
well,
also,
you gave me...
why does poor Will have to be the only one that shares information?
And he's also like, well, you gave me 2 minutes before you joined as a page, so that also wasn't very fair. And she's like, that's a good point. She asks if the lines are awakening and like if Camlin is coming and if he's ready to be one of them. And he's like, well, I don't want to leave my friends to fight alone. And she asks like, oh, so you never wanted to be a leader? And he's like, no, I just never wanted. And I was like, yeah, Nick has a point where he's like, no, I just never wanted a situation where I would have been like King Arthur because that means like the world is ending.
Yeah.
So they go down to have dinner with all the other pages and people. 3 women come in and they say they're hosting the event as the Line of the Roses, Order of the Rose. And one woman, Paige Ainsley's mother, thinks Bree is the help and reprimands her for not listening. Nick yells at her. She's horrified at who he chose for a page. And she's like, what would your father think about this? And here his dad comes on down and says, don't worry, I voted for Obama. No, he doesn't say that. He's just like, I'm really happy Nick is back in the fold. I'm happy with whatever happens to get him back. Vaughn's mother is
basically the most racist encounter that you could have.
I don't know. Later on, one girl and one person touches her hair without permission. That felt pretty
also bad. And she calls them out on that, where a lot of times I feel like Bree does hold back and does not like address. She's not necessarily the character that's always like fighting back. You know, she has to dial it in. She has to maintain some like control over her emotions in these situations, which is I give all the kudos and credit in the world that she's able to do this because some of these things are just enraging. But in the hair like moment, she does respond and she's like, hey, look, this is not a petting zoo. Don't touch my hair.
Well, and there is like a thing where, I don't know, you always have to be concerned about safety. Like she has to be safe in situations. And even in this section, like at one point she calls out bigotry and racism and someone goes in for the attack, like jumps across a table to get at her. So the thing is,
she's always considering this in the back of her mind, like considering her situation and that it's part of that being othered wherever she is, that she always has to be thinking about that and how to maintain her safety.
And so they head to dinner. She kind of asked about the Order of the Rose and he's like, yeah, women used to not be allowed to join in. And so they like started up their own women's league if they were like birthing children who would be part of this. Vaughn, who is one of the pages, is immediately aggressive to Bree when all the pages are sitting by themselves. He's saying she's a cheat since she stayed behind when the pages were ordered back to the lodge the night before. She's like, I didn't cheat. I just got confused. And he's like, yeah, sure you did. I
don't get how that's cheating also.
I think his implication was she wanted to show that she was braver than the rest of them to like bump herself up for the squires. Kind of like how he keeps asking Nick to spar. Like at one point, Nick is like, this man just keeps asking me to spar. I don't want to spar with you. So I think that's the implication that like she was trying to show off. He also alleges that Bree is trading Nick sexual favors to become his page. She's kind of knows that, like, again, this is a part where I don't love Nick, but also you have to check your own privileges.
Honestly, I don't love Nick very much at all.
I don't like Nick at all. But He's just a boring blonde man.
Yes.
But he like during the last section gave her a bunch of rules, and one of them was to like blend in and like hide yourself, which is something where it's like that's like setting her up for failure because she is the first Black person to become a part of this. So like saying don't defend yourself, just blend in is an impossible task, which just shows his own privilege and how ignorant he is.
Because, I was gonna say,
yeah, because Vaughn is like aggressive and he feels the need to be aggressive because Nick is higher up on the echelon and like brought in someone else, you know.
Yeah, it's exactly like you said, Hannah, that it shows Nick's privilege that he doesn't have to think about these things, that for him, he's able to just lay low and don't draw attention to yourself. Blend in. And it's like, not a possibility.
She kind of notes that she's supposed to keep quiet right then, but she can't help it. She tells Vaughn that he's a bigot and a bully who's afraid of her. And then she does like use privilege as a cudgel, which is good in this situation where she kind of is like, you're not doing yourself any favors. You're questioning Arthur himself by saying I don't belong, and his judgment was like problematic. And he's like, he doesn't owe you an explanation on who he picks. And if you act like that, like he's not going to choose you to be his squire, or even if you get chosen at all. So again, Vaughn immediately goes for violence, but others stop him. Greer is being nice to Bree, pointing out that neither of them belong there and they're both disruptors. And Whitty asks to join in, who is noted to have a southern accent. I'm like, all of them probably do.
I think they likely mostly do if they're from that area.
But Nick and his dad come in. The dad reveals a 5th rank scion.
I've been calling them scions.
Scion. I never
like
know how
Toyota
to say
Scion.
I can't pronounce Scion, guys. I always say Scion,
and
then I'm like
GJ, our listener, told us that over.
Thank you. I did call it Ether earlier, so I did listen.
Yes.
So a 5th rank scion was called, and they're all pissed that they were left in the dark. He's kind of like, look, we didn't know what was the problem until it was a problem. And he also mentions that there's rumors of the line of Morgaine popping up. And he says they must prepare for Tristan, Lancelot, and Arthur to be called. And they all have to move up the page competition in order to get squires. Some do drop out at this announcement. Nick leads Bree into the forest to the next trial blindfolded, so she can't see what's going on. He tells her about the line of Morgaine. They were a group of Merlins in the 1400s who were excommunicated. Legends say that they attacked the order. It changed a lot of things and made the people who kind of control the order, the regents, way more strict. He says they have a 0 tolerance policy for someone in the line of Morgaine. I'm always going to call it like that. And she asks if she would be treated like that if they found out about her. And he too casually is like, yeah, probably. And I'm like, Nick,
I know.
What the hell? They realize that there's a chance that the Merlin who messed with her memory is from the line of Morgaine. Nick found out about Vaughn spreading rumors, and he's kind of like, do you need me to take care of something? And she's like, no, I like that would make it worse, actually. Don't do that. And then she's like, he flirts with her a little bit, and she of course is catching feelings. So she's caught those feels. He goes to check on something, and Cell comes up and immediately screams at her, accusing her of being evil.
Yeah, he's like, Melbourne, demon,
get out of here. And she points out he has nothing on her, and he would look foolish trying to say that she was evil without some proof. She's like, my dad had a dog like you once, made a lot of noise, and he had to get rid of him because he was no longer useful. And he's like, you're lucky I'm used to being baited, and leaves. She finds out Nick and Cell can feel one another, and then she finds out that they're in an arena.
Which made me question, does Cell, maybe I read right over to the top of this, but does Cell have this connection with all of the other scions?
I don't know. He says
because
that
he's the Merlin for their order.
I think he took an oath specifically to be bound to Nick, which like matters because they used it with magic. So he says, because I don't know if it's with everyone. I don't know if he has it with everyone, but I know that he is bound to Nick technically. And so Nick can feel like Cell if he has or ever has murderous intent, he said, and he can feel when Nick's in trouble. So
in danger. Because he's got to like go protect him.
So Bree,
I just wasn't sure if that was everyone.
I have no idea. I think it's unclear.
Legendborn stands. Let us know.
Sound off in the comments. Bree is paired with Sydney, who's one of the pages, as a partner who despises her.
Mm-hmm.
They have to do a challenge where 2 pages carry 2 practice dummies across an arena and get away from 2 hellhounds that are fake that Cell creates. Bree is supposed to be the runner while Sydney kills them with some knives, but Bree accidentally falls on one of the knives and one of the hellhounds comes back like after her.
Mm-hmm.
But it shows that Bree's pretty tenacious because she notes like the hellhound is more about smell and sound. It can't like really see, and she uses it to her advantage to kill one and have Sydney rescue the other dummy.
I will say she is quick on her feet too, like picking up stuff like that. Because if something was coming at you, like attacking you, would you immediately be able to? Oh, you know what? I just noticed this thing about them. Like I would never if something was coming at me in my face and like no way.
She's a very smart girl. And so they're all a few of the pages get kicked out because they fail, and then they're all going to the arena for like a cheering session for like a yay, you all passed. And then everyone realizes that Nick has been nabbed by a hell snake.
Yes.
Have you ever been nabbed by a hell snake? But like,
I mean, earlier today, yes, but
I also like this section just wowed me because all of a sudden someone's like and then they're like,
oh wait, I didn't hear you. You got too high pitched. We didn't hear you.
Oh, sorry. All of a sudden, someone just starts screaming like Nick, and they all turn, and there's just a hell snake, and I was like, is Nick in the hell snake? Or are they just yelling to protect him? Like it wasn't clear.
Yeah, that was not. I wasn't exactly sure what happened there, honestly.
So apparently, a hell snake like snuck up on them, grabbed Nick, and like surrounded him, and then they're all just
he was just wrapped around him. I'm assuming.
Yes. But Cell comes in and saves him, and that was the only moment I knew when it was like the hell snake disappeared, unraveling around Nick, and I was like, "Oh, so Nick was in there. Thank you for letting me know."
Kind of a Jungle Book situation.
Kind of a Jungle Book situation. Bree goes in to check on Nick while he's sleeping, and he's like, "Now who's creepy?" And I'm like, "You guys are
still you."
Teenagers. They're at this point I had to look up Nick's age because I was like, should I be bothered by them having a slumber party? He is 17. It's fine. But his dad is going to fly the coop the next day to go talk to the northern chapters about what's going on and how to become prepared. Cell will be in charge while he's away. Again, Cell is 17.
I'm also questioning why Cell is in charge so much when he is very volatile.
Very volatile. And like, I'm sorry. Is only Arthur allowed to like, I understand that most people like die young, but these kids have to have some living parents out and about who like were also
there's like no house mother
like
situation in this place. Like, come on.
And again, like Bree starts spending the night over there quite frequently where I'm like, hey, she's 16. Shouldn't she have like a dorm room where she has to like check in for the night?
Like there's some kind of like floor person that's like, oh, hey, how are you doing?
Bed checks. You guys are effing 16-year-old children on a college camp. The way they pretend that these people are 18 and like, I'm just like, no, they're children. Don't do that. But anyway, he flirts with her and they fall asleep in his bed together. She wakes up during the night at 1 a.m. and he's like, do you know what a perfect time to tell you about my tragic backstory would be right now?
Which was so strange.
It's just like, it's 1 a.m. I would be like,
here's the other thing about this though. Completely believable, honestly.
Oh, like, yeah.
I can totally see this happening with people of this age that they just like wake up at this time and then they're like,
dump.
You know what? I just need to tell you all about these horrible things that happened to me. And she's like, of course I will listen and believe everything that you say because I love you.
I am such a heavy sleeper. I'm just like, what? If someone woke me up at the dead of the night, I'd be like, what?
I'm not gonna lie, Hannah, like when I'm extremely heavy sleeper, I get pissed when I get woken up. Like my husband knows, like, do not wake me up because I will be furious.
Could you imagine if one of us got woken up by our partner and they're like, can I tell you about my tragic backstory? And we're both like, no.
I do not want to hear about it.
I avoided there's like a book that someone wanted to read and I was like, I don't really want to read that. It was about focus. And then I saw someone on Bookstagram reviewing it. They're like, this is the most basic ass idea. He just says things that people should know. Nighttime is for sleeping. So I've been walking around for days going, nighttime is for sleeping. Like,
that's funny.
So if someone woke me up at 1 a.m, I would say that to them. But
Yeah.
anyway, he decides to dump on her his tragic backstory. His mother was part of the order growing up. And her dad was seriously involved in the order as the potential reincarnation of Arthur. And so he trained his son very strictly. His mother hated all the training and what it would mean to become Arthur. So she tried to run away with Nick. His father and the regents caught them immediately, and they removed him from her memory. So he finds her in a park, and she does not recognize him.
She was mesmered so that she would never know who he is.
And so his dad kind of like, after they ran into her, leaves. Like, he just moves him away so that he doesn't have to be like shown that. And afterwards he was just so mad at everything. He was so mad at how the order treated his mom. He couldn't be a part of it. He does point out, and
it's shocking that he's willing to come back after all that. But
I know he does point out that like the likelihood was slim for being called at one point in this section, which I do appreciate, where he was like, look, me being rebellious was all for show. The chances of me getting called were so slim. Like, everyone just kind of thought I was throwing a hissy fit, and I was, but like, it's not my choice if I get called, you know? So the next day, again, she jokes with him about how Vaughn really wants to be his squire, and apparently he keeps asking Nick to spar, and he's like, do you want to be my squire? And she's like, I don't know. And she like tucks her hair behind her ear.
And he's like, and kiss a little bit because we could do that. And she's like, kiss? What?
I know. They kiss on the way home, and Evan and Russ see them because these two are constantly being heckled by a bunch of white bros. This section when he's walking her home makes me so upset, Laura, because he's like, you know, we could kiss a little. And she's like, you're so silly. And he's like, don't do that. My feelings for you are real. It's been 3 days. It's been 3 days, Laura.
I was ready to mention how much time have we gone through, Hannah. We've talked about a lot of things and our frustrations with them. It's been 3
Wednesday.
days.
It's Wednesday. No. It's Wednesday. And so all of a sudden, after
Wednesday... But at the same time, completely believable.
Oh, yeah. Like, I remember in college when you would have that moment where you're like, I think I really like him. And it's like, no, you don't. You had one drunken hangout until midnight, and you will never see him again.
Oh my gosh. He was fantastic. I think there could be a real thing there. It's like, yeah, you talked to him for like 5 minutes when you walked from class together. Like, that's not a thing.
It's just hormones. I'm so sorry to tell you.
I'm so sorry to tell you this, but
just
no.
Hormones. So we do a little bit of a time jump because they can't put all of the events of this novel into a week.
Thank God.
It is Friday now, and Bree is going to a beer garden with Nick for a date. Again, they are 16 and 17. Alice can't help because she is a normal 16-year-old, and she's like, yeah, my parents make me go home from this college on the weekend, so I don't go drinking with a fake ID.
I like that they mentioned that because it added a little more reality to the situation where it's like, these are 16-year-olds. I can't believe that she's able to just do all these things.
I know. It's the boarding school trope of young adults where you're like, why is everything in a boarding school? And I'm like, so you don't have to tell your parents where you're at.
Right. Right.
So her next therapy session with Patricia is at a cemetery. Patricia, what are you doing? Patricia is teaching her about Root, not about mental health, and how it is a conversation with their ancestors. Root is very based on the principle of like asking and receiving. They ask the ancestors for aid, and the ancestors allow for certain things and don't allow for other things. This is also the section
go ahead.
Oh, this is also the section where Bree is like, maybe I'll get to see my dead mom. And again, Patricia's like, maybe that's a bad idea, but you know, I digress.
And Patricia mentions that it's different from like the order because they just kind of take it without asking from their line.
Yeah.
And that it's not as much of a respectful and cultural tie as it is within the root magic.
I'm currently slowly making my way through Braiding Sweetgrass, which is very similar in its energy of like discussing how like what we take from the world is in conversation with the world and how we should always respect and pay like, and it talks about like how we love the world, but we have to think about how the world loves us back, and we don't want to think about that because you wouldn't harm something that loves you. So yeah, interesting stuff.
I need to read that. I just bought the physical copy of it.
Honestly, I have a friend who did audio and physical at the same time, and she said it was really worthwhile because you can hear the author reading it, and she loved that. She thought
I'll have to do that.
It's really good. And it's available at your local library, which is how I got the audiobook. I also really like this section because it does have a lot of stuff about like the history of colonial America, especially in the South, where like they discuss this is like the oldest cemetery around. It has the first grave of a young Di-Fi boy who was buried in the 1700s. Patricia points out a wall where segregation started and the Black people were buried without any grave markers, and how like horrifying it was. Like tailgating happened on top of them, and a recent study showed that there were over 500 bodies buried there in mass graves.
And Bree's like, I feel very uncomfortable with this. Like I don't like walking on this ground even because I'm walking on top of them. Like this feels uncomfortable.
And Patricia's kind of like, this is about showing the respect of things. And then we find out about how Patricia is able to walk in memories of of her ancestors, and about, you know, the root that is in them. And Bree talks about how she doesn't really know anything about her family. So she asks Bree to take her hands. Patricia takes Bree into the past to walk along Patricia's ancestry. A woman is hurt by a man named Carr, who whipped her for pretty much no reason at all and just like blamed it on something. Abby, who is a healer, comes in to help her. Patricia points out Carr's monument is on the quad currently. And she's like,
well, why? Is that the one that was like facing the one way, that statue that Bree had seen earlier and was like, yeah, this is very uncomfortable.
Yep. And she's kind of like horrified that a man who could do that would be on a monument. And she's like, well, people have two histories. They watch Abby help Mary. She isn't able to completely heal her back. Patricia says this is because the ancestors can't heal everything. They can take care of what they can and leave the rest to, you know, trusting other things in danger. And Bree is a little bit unnerved by this because she thinks about how Will is able to heal everything and heal someone completely. There is a woman in the memory called Louisa. She sees Bree and she says, I see you, and grabs her. And I'm like, oh, that would be a very scary moment in the TV show. She takes her to another
This whole section, honestly, was giving me very much like Kindred vibes.
Yes, very much so. She takes her to another memory. Patricia is no longer there. Louisa says she's back in her own time, and she'll see her when she goes back. They're watching a woman have a baby. She is told by the other two that it is a crossroads baby. Bree sees that it has amber eyes, and dun dun dun. Guess who else has amber eyes?
Future possible boyfriend.
Tedward. Selward. The woman says that it's her son and she loves him, but they say he won't stay that way and he will leave her just like his father did.
And they say they have to get rid of him before he gets too old.
Yes. And comes into power pretty much. Then another woman from the memory takes Bree to the 90s. She sees a young woman there named Ruth, who is Patricia's sister. She's walking on the quad, and when she hides, and she sees a man opening, or someone in a hood opening a gate using what looks like blood, and hellhounds come out. Bree comes back. She tells Patricia about how she saw Ruth, and Patricia's like, oh yes, I walk with her in her memories often. And I'm like, not healthy. She graduated 25 years ago, which means that she was around when Bree's mom was there. Bree realizes that they showed her these memories on purpose. She gets up and runs, and she tries to reach Nick, but she can't. She knows she won't forget this, and she feels a lot stronger in her motivations. She goes to talk to Will, and she tells him that Selwyn is Shadowborn, and he's like, yeah, I know.
Here's the thing. We all know.
But... And she's like, he's evil. And he's like, well, look, he screams at you for being evil, but you can't scream at him for being evil. He's like, well, all Merlins are part demon, part Shadowborn. They have protections placed on them from the original Merlin who like sealed and kind of controlled them by being Merlins, by being sworn to help the Legendborn.
Through their oaths.
Yes, but they are bred from succubi. Weird detail.
Yeah. This is where it started to really get into the fantastical.
I know, because Will's like, well, he's bred to be amazing and sexy and awesome, and he
Whenever
runs
we have to talk
faster.
about things being bred to be a certain way,
It
I
feels
get
bad.
uncomfortable. Yeah, like doesn't it feel like racehorsey? Like
Yes.
I don't like that.
After this moment, Selwyn does become very racehorsey, which again, I forgive him a lot of like his volatility and all that stuff. I don't forgive him for his treatment of Bree because it's just not okay. But two things can be true at once. One person can be very much a victim and they can victimize other people. And yes. But he's kind of like, he's really amazing if you look at him. And all of a sudden, Cell is like, and I have amazing hearing. And he comes running in.
That actually made me laugh. Actually, Cell from here until where we're going to stop was quite enjoyable.
He was very funny once he stops being like just a screaming impediment. Like,
I like that scream though.
I have amazing hearing too.
Yeah, I love that.
And he's like, how dare you tell her? And Will's like, she guessed. Like, it's fine. She's
fine. So smart. I'm sorry.
But he's like, she figured it out. He pretty much wants to hurt Bree at that point, but Will's like, hey, you'd have to go through me. You have an oath to Arthur as well as the Legendborn, so you won't be able to. And he's like, fine. And he like storms out. So she goes on a group hang with Nick and his friends. And she finds out about the prom. No, she finds out about the selection gala. I know. It was a group hang. This is also where they're like, oh yeah, you have to like go to the selection ball and people come in and do your makeup and hair. Your hair is so curly. And they just,
this is where they touch her hair.
Which is ridiculous and not okay. And she does call them out for it. She and Nick kind of start talking and she's drinking. She's 16.
Yeah.
And she goes to hang out alone with him and Cell like just pops up and he's like, look, the Hell Snake got Nick recently, so I have to watch over him. And Nick is like, get out of here. And he's like, no, I'm in charge.
Love that they're like trying to have a moment. Like I'm picturing honestly like he's pulled her off on like a little balcony similar to like Beauty and the Beast castle. And who is standing in the bushes but Cell?
He's just like Homer Simpson.
Yes,
just like disappearing into the bushes.
Slides back into them.
So the moment is gone, so they go home and chat on the phone instead. And then she's like, hey, can Cell hear you? Because he told me his hearing was amazing.
Oh, this is too great.
Hear you. He told me he had a basic hearing. It's so funny. It's so teenagery. Like, can he hear us?
Yes.
Like, she asks about the gate opening in the 90s. He asks how she knew about that. She mentioned she's working with someone who is an ether user who's helping her with her talents.
And he like, only knows somebody else who's like part of our order. And she's like,
that's none of your business.
Say. And he's like, is it someone else that you know who can use ether? And she's like, I can't say.
And she but she also
just said then
she hasn't told him about being able to like burn red. He only knows that she can't be mesmered and the oaths didn't work on her.
Right.
He says that only demon blood can open the gates, and she's like, well, could that have been like someone like Cell? And he's like, no, like if you're under the oaths, like you cannot use your power for evil. Like it's very hard. It's dark casting, like the line of Morgaine. There are limits to Merlin's powers. That's why they're allowed to be part of the order. She asks about the power of the regents, and he says that they will do anything to keep a secret. And she's like, even hunt down a once born witness like my mom? And he's like, yes. And it's like, how do you not know that these people are probably a little bit evil, Nick? Yeah. And she talks about how she wants to hunt down who's responsible and make them pay. And he's like, what would you have me do? And it's like, oh, you're going to fall on the side of patriarchy and rule and order, aren't you?
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So the second trial is beginning. It's a scavenger hunt, which is hilarious.
Great.
Like, this is the most serious trials of your life to get superpowers and fight demons. Like,
I picture it like Ron Swanson being excited for a Leslie Knope scavenger hunt.
Like,
you know that my birthday. You know that thing that you did with like the extremely intricate clues that keep getting more difficult, keep increasing difficulty with each one. Yeah, I don't want that.
I don't want that. She's really worried because you get partnered with one of the Legendborn, and she's going to get Fitz, who is terrible. But instead she's paired with Cell, who's just gonna stand near her. He created the ether objects and is holding them all together at the same time. She's pretty impressed with his power because this is where she's like, oh, he's like not like the other boys.
This is where we start to see Bree venture into the I think I like him.
I think he might be. I think I could fix him.
Just misunderstood.
He's just really damaged, but like, aren't we all damaged when you get underneath it? Don't we all want our partners to like start off thinking we're evil demon spawn? Like, I know it's my dream.
You know what I love? When someone screams at me.
It makes me feel like
calls me a demon.
It makes me feel like the way I make myself feel, which is bad. So I
we have that in common. We both make me feel bad.
It's like every man I wanted to date in college. I'm so glad we're doing a YA novel.
I hope there's no kids listening.
Guys, don't listen to this version, and also like make better love interest decisions. Don't pick Cell.
Go to bed.
Go to bed. It's after 9. What are you doing?
Why are you awake? School tomorrow.
She's pretty good at scavenging. She's a good scavenger hunt person. And she's like, wow, I haven't run into any hellhounds yet. And so it's like, you came close, but you haven't yet. And she's like, cool. And then
she's like, you were just gonna like let one attack me and not say anything. He's like, yep.
And then she has to go to the graveyard, and she realizes all of a sudden he's not there, and that means a hellhound is coming for her. She then immediately realizes that Cell is like directly attacking her with a hellhound to make her demon spawn come out. And he's like, show yourself. And
like, she's like, he brought it and created it and is like, here, get her.
Yes, because these are all ether hellhounds. They're not real.
Because his have like a certain color to them, right? They're
like a light
blue and then okay.
And then actual hell things are usually greenish.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's like, look, I'm not evil. I can't do anything about this. Please call this off. And he's like, never. You have to show yourself. And it's like definitely the thing where you put a witch in water and you're like, if you can float, you're a witch. If you die, you're not.
And all of this works out so well for Cell because after this happens, they get attacked by actual hellhounds, or hell foxes.
And well, but during this time, she also says like, Nick is right. You are a monster. Merlins are monsters, and he does look genuinely hurt by that because he did grow up with Nick like a brother and or something else, but like
like kind of like just being the kid that is hanging around and not part of the family.
So she the hell foxes come up and he saves her and takes her into a tunnel, and he's like, okay, I believe you are evil because no evil person would be this inept.
Well, and then he's like, I can't believe this. You are seriously this stupid that you don't know what's going on with you. Like, how could I possibly think that you were something because you're so dumb? And I'm like, Are you serious, Cell? Like, get over yourself.
He's so rude after this, where I'm like, man, you're just the worst. Because he's like, I kind of just don't give a shit about you anymore. And he does admit that he knows the oaths don't work on her. He doesn't know like what she is, but he doesn't care. He like, he's just like, fine, whatever. You're whatever to me now. And I'm like, dude, you're still the worst, because it's like, hey, I found out that you're one of the most interesting, fascinating people in the world, but you really don't have any effect on my life. So it sounds like none of my business. And it's like, you're a really shitty Merlin. Like, you should probably care about.
You should be looking into this, shouldn't he? Like, what?
But he's like, yeah, my mother studied demonology. and you defy everything we know because like we believe that ether comes from physics and you feel like you're just different. But I also think you're going to fail at the competition and then Nick won't care about you anymore.
Oh.
So I don't care about you. And you're just kind of an anomaly who might die. So like, fair enough. I do appreciate where like all these people are just horrible to her because they care so much that she exists and that's not okay. Right. And Cell does be like, it's just you're none of my business anymore. But I am like, it makes you kind of bad at your job, Cell. I get it, you're 17, but I wonder if you're good at your job.
I mean, no.
It's really not. Everyone
they're putting a lot of pressure on these really young people.
I know.
And I question this order
so much. Yeah. I mean, the regions have to be like 2 kids in a trench coat at this point for how effective they are. They get out of the tunnel and the foxes do attack. Bree suddenly burns with ether and punches through a fox.
Yeah, that was cool.
That was really cool. And then I love this because she starts like screaming because there's just like a dead animal on her.
Well, and it's like oozing on her and everything. But the thing is, like, won't dissolve because she's got her arm stuck in it.
So Cell is like, I have to take it off you because it will not disappear until it is off you.
He's like, but you got to close your hand because you can't pull your hand back through.
You punched it and then you opened it. So now you have to close it again. And she's like, I cannot do that. I cannot squish this thing. And he's like, you have to. And so
unfortunately, that's a must.
And he is like really astounded because he's like, you created ether? That's not possible. We can take from things, but it seemed to come from you. You burned like a furnace.
Right.
And they're kind of like talking for a second. And then all of a sudden everyone comes in and they're like, what happened to you all? We heard something and you guys weren't there. And Bree does admit, which is bad, that Cell stuck a hellhound on her, and Nick punches Cell, and Cell is like, that was a low blow. I can't punch you back. And Nick is like, exactly.
That's why I did it, because you cannot hit me back. I'm like, okay.
And at that point, Bree is like, do I have questions about Nick? I should.
It took too long for her to have questions about Nick.
So Will is helping her. He sees her butt, but he's like, dude, I have a boyfriend. It's fine.
He says like, hey, do you want me to fix these bruises? And she's like, you mean all the ones on my butt? And he's like, well, yes. He's like,
I don't want you to see my butt.
I don't want you to see me naked. And he's like, here's the thing, I'm a medical professional. Like, I'm pre-med, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm the healer of this group. This is not a sexy time thing. It's fine.
And he admits that he's dating someone outside the group because Will has the most emotional intelligence of anyone, including the therapist. This
is what we were talking about earlier, where Will is the only one that's like, you got to date outside the group. You got to remove yourself as much as you possibly can for your own sanity.
I just remember how much I enjoyed our sorority because at least 60% of my time was spent outside the sorority. It was like, I really needed that delineation.
Yeah, you have to.
But he talks about how like squires and their charges usually shouldn't date, especially if there's like heterosexuality involved, because then they could have children. It can mess things up.
Have children. And I thought it was the different lines could not date, like different scions.
The different scions are not allowed to date. Like they're definitely not, because you can't mix bloodlines.
Right, because you can't have like
because eugenics, Laura. Like, and he also mentions that like girls way back when were probably murdered because you couldn't have a female in scion because women were less than.
Well, which brings in that Rose Society or whatever it was that they weren't allowed to be in this for the longest time. It's like, I wonder how that happened.
Sexism. And he also talks about how like, so he does talk about how squires and like especially heterosexual squires and their scions shouldn't because like there's too much emotion that gets involved, especially if they have children.
And also like the whole like Diet 35 thing.
Yeah, Diet 35. And then there's squires, and squires shouldn't date each other because they're connected emotionally to a scion. And like, it's probably not great to know that like the love of your life will leave you to die on the battlefield if their scion is in trouble. And he's like, it just makes it messy. Like, you should just date outside and just, it's none of your business.
And she's like, but what about why isn't science good? Is that still
He's
on
like,
the table?
it's not
Because
great. Like, and he's like, could you
I would
imagine?
kind of like to do that.
He's like, could you imagine being connected to your ex? Like, don't do that.
He's very
Um,
realistic about it. And then he's like, but why are you asking? Because you like Nick? And she's like, wait, what?
and then Nick accidentally sees her butt, and he makes fun of her for Nick walking in on a patient with her doctor naked.
Why did he just walk in?
Because Nick thinks he's allowed everywhere, Laura. We find
Like,
out that
have you heard
only
him knocking?
we find out that only 6 people are left, so they're going into round 3. And she does scold him for what he did to Cell, defending him. And he states he's getting a trainer to help her because the last rounds are battle rounds, battle royale. Bree meets with Patricia again, and another person who knows Root,
Yes.
Mariah. And she's like, why is another woman in my therapy session? And Patricia is like, because this isn't a therapy session. Like,
because immediately I thought if somebody showed up to a therapy session that I was at, I would have a lot of questions.
It's also the 3rd therapy session in a fucking week. So, like,
yes.
Okay.
It's a lot of therapy.
Mariah tells Bree about the Black student movement, which like focuses on community and building like relationships. And Bree is like, oh my gosh, I have not done enough research to find community. And they're all like, hey, it's been a week. And I'm like, it's been a week.
Yes. But this is also when Bree mentions, like I had mentioned earlier, that she actually like does feel community just being with these 2 women. That it's one of the only times that she's really felt like she can be more herself and open with these people.
We also find out that Mariah is a medium with no social cues because she like immediately looks at Bree. She's like, you're surrounded by death. And it's like,
there's so much death all around you.
Harsh vibe, Mariah. Like, who are you, Patricia? Like,
are you Patricia's apprentice?
Are you Patricia's apprentice? Because you guys both have the same amount of chill.
Kind of a lot of same vibes there.
And Patricia finds out that Bree has a connection to the Order. She says that their power is in trapping their ancestors and tying them to themselves. And that is the power of the colonizer. And she's like, you can't do that. And Bree realizes that all the mothers in her line are all gone, kind of like through a reading with Mariah. And she runs away from them feeling like a coward. She goes into training. She is not great at it. She is tired after it, but she is working hard. And then in the very next chapter, after a week of not therapy, Patricia fires Bree as a client because she's like
so out of left field to me. Did this seem weird to you?
It seemed out of left field and like incredibly inappropriate because she's like, hey, I think you're too damaged. I can't help you.
Yeah, the way that she does it is probably the worst, honestly, because she's like, here's the thing. I think you've got more going on than what I was told. And I don't think that I'm the best person to help you. And it's like, you didn't really try to help her, first of all. You found out something about her and you immediately went and tried to use it to figure out like what's going on here. Like why are you having these feelings or why are you able to do these things or whatever? And it was like, okay, that doesn't seem like you're addressing her therapy.
Right. You're just addressing her power, which is probably not the most healthy for someone who needs like connection and vulnerability.
Also, if this is something that's very much passed on in families and everything, within knowing someone just a couple of days, is it her place to immediately, when she does not have that strong of a relationship with this girl, to start showing her things about this? Or is it something they needed to maybe develop more of a relationship before she started revealing some of this to her?
It just seems like there was like a lot of, I'm going to do this immediately. And then a week later, like drop you when like you have a responsibility to this person that you created an inappropriate relationship with if you wanted just a therapist relationship with her. But she does note that she feels like Bree kind of only wants almost like retribution for what happened to her mother. And she needs to move forward and likely needs to do this with someone else. She does tell Bree to find out who she is at like the bottom of it all, and she points out that the Order has tied their power for hundreds of years to ancestry, and that has a price. Bree's fighting isn't getting better. One night, Cell comes down. He's like, "Do you want to win? I'll help you train." And it's like, why?
Cue the montage.
And he points out to that I loved this because you're right. It's such a montage where he's like, "Do you want to know why you're a terrible fighter?" And she's like, years of not training to everyone else's training. And he's like, no, the rest of them have purpose. And it's like, what did you talking about, Cell?
The thing is, there's like, when you're reading this, there's like his quotes in italics as she's thinking about the things that are happening, or they're like working through this training. So it's totally a montage. And you can just like hear his voice recording over like her boxing or whatever, or running up to the top of the stairs. Like,
do you feel that deep inside you? Not anger, but fury. Use it.
Use the fury. Use the power inside you.
He was like, you need to figure out who you are. A big, huge part of this book is figuring out who you are.
Yes.
He does remind her that Nick is very righteous and he is prone to want to do what is right. And she is keeping secrets from him because he doesn't know about her ether abilities and he won't like that. She tells Nick,
she's like, you know what? Cell's not that bad of a guy. Like, he's helping me.
He's kind of nice if you think about it. And like, look at him with his shirt off. I think I could fix him.
Amber eyes. I think I could get it. I think I could get it.
I kind of like, I understand that he was bred from succubi, but like, I think I see something different than what everyone else sees.
There's potential there.
I see under the abusive screams, okay?
Yes. That was yesterday afternoon. We moved on. It was so long ago.
There was a really nice fighting montage, okay? And I think it's changed.
There's so many voiceovers, so many inspirational quotes. We've moved on.
She does tell Nick about losing like the person who is trying to teach her ether, and he feels bad, but he's there for her. And he says he has to go get his dad after the trial, but they should meet up in his room. They start the trials. The first round, Bree goes up against her opponent and she loses. The second, she's about to lose, but she starts thinking about the training montage. She
starts thinking about Cell and what would he say?
Beats him, and then she has to fight Vaughn, and Vaughn has to be evil because his name is Vaughn, and he is big, but she is able to use her speed. She thinks about. I
immediately thought of Vaughn from Community with the tiny nipples.
Yep, Vaughn with the tiny nipples. That's pretty much who I was picturing. She thinks about how Cell told her to use her fury, and I misspelled this and said furry. So
use the furry inside you.
And she beats Vaughn. Everyone is cheering, but then he sucker punches her pretty much with a stick because he is evil. She wakes up in the hospital. She finds out that Vaughn.
I don't know if he's evil or if it's just an example of like how people, even within groups that you think are quote unquote good, can really have bad intentions for you if things don't go their way.
Right. So she wakes up in the hospital. She finds out that Vaughn was thrown out of the competition by Nick, and he said he had tiny nipples before he did it.
Yes.
She talks to Sarah and Tor, my two least favorite names in this entire book. Tor has been awakened at this point as the line of Tristan, and Sarah is now moving a bit faster because of it. They each have like Tristan speed because they're connected to each other. She says they've been together for years, but before Tor dated Tristan to make her parents angry. And then Tor dated Cell because her parents hated it. And apparently Cell is ether drunk again, and everyone is avoiding him. He's just screaming in the woods, which again, they do live on a campus. So like, I'm sure it's not fully like soundproof. So could you imagine living on campus and being like, oh my God, that drunk 17-year-old is screaming again.
So, like, here's my thing with this whole, it's the perfect cover up for him to just seem like he is drunk and to be this ether drunk, because it's like you said, everybody's just gonna, on this campus, just gonna assume, that stupid kid is out in the woods, smashing around and screaming. Oh, we should just go home.
So anyway, Bree thinks she can fix him, so she's gonna go talk to the drunken screaming guy. She's like, I think I can get through to him, and so she goes out. She finds out that he's bad because Nick told his dad like everything about what Cell's been doing when he was left in charge, how he doesn't trust Cell, about like how he's been erratic, and Nick is kind of pushing for his dad to remove Cell as a Merlin, and if this happens, like it's no hold barred on Cell's sanity.
It's basically, so this bothered me a little bit too, the way that this whole order manipulates him is pretty sickening, because basically what they can do is be like, we're going to remove you from your oaths and you're not going to be part of our order anymore, and what will happen to him is basically like the demons will take control of him and he will kind of no longer be what he is.
Right. And it's because they think he's unstable and like the ends justify the means pretty much, including to Nick. This was also a sad part because he talks about how like he's like, well, he's talking to her about how like Nick actually cares about who she is and not what she can do. And the implication is like Nick doesn't give a shit about Cell. And he's like, well, don't feel guilty. Like, this is just what happens. And she's kind of like, no, he wouldn't do that. Like, this is, but we also find out during this moment, like, this is my part where, again, two things can be true at once because this is a very upsetting part. But Cell also admits like he spied on her therapy sessions.
This is what I was going to bring up. Like, it's so many bizarre things surrounding her therapy where, okay, he's spying on her, listening in, and then he's just like, don't worry about it. You didn't even say anything worthwhile to hear. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And so she's like,
and he's like, I thought you were
racking her brain. Like, what did I say?
Yeah. And so I just was he's just not great. Because he's just like, I had to make sure you weren't a spy. So I was willing to do what I needed to. And it's like, no, sir, that's not okay.
It's like every time you start to like kind of sympathize with him a little bit, you immediately recoil because he does something like, oh, come on.
Well, he's just like throwing abuses at her. And he's like, I don't need your help. And she's like, well, I think I should stick up for you. Like, this isn't right. He's like, I don't give a shit. And that is chapter 36. Yep. We end on kind of a bummer.
I know.
But yeah, this next section, like, I obviously don't trust anyone. I think we're supposed to end up liking Cell, because the alternative is Nick, and I feel like we definitely should like him, but I feel like Cell.
I'm trying to look at this from like the perspective of like how I would read it if I was in high school or maybe just starting college. And it's tricky for me because I feel like I very much would be getting into the boyfriend of it all.
Oh, same. I was very much a boyfriend girl. So
I think it's hard for me to be like, I don't find Nick to be that likable of a character because it's me as an older person reading this book. And I'm like, yeah, Nick seems shady. I don't really like a lot of vibes I'm getting there. But a younger person might just be like, oh, he's like just the happy guy that everybody likes, and kind of like the puppy dog vibes. And I'm just like, okay, but
I was never drawn to that person in books. Like, I never really liked the puppy dog because I was a girl who liked boys who made me feel bad because I made myself feel bad.
We have that in common. We both make me feel bad. It's worth repeating.
And as an adult, I've dated a very nice person who stokes fires for me during our podcast and makes me hot cocoa when I'm trying to read books. So like, it gets better, ladies, but also like, don't love the Selwyn Canes of the group, which is probably why I'm harsher on him. Like Nick, I'm just like, you're whatever, you're bland. I never liked you. But the Selwyn Canes, I'm like, you're a little bit dangerous because girls do buy into your stuff. But like, also, I should be more, this will go into our character things. I should be more critical of Nick. I think I'm less critical because I don't think there's a chance those two end up together. So I'm like, whatever, we're going to find out he's bad. And like Selwyn, I think, is maybe going to be put on a pedestal. And I'm like, I don't want that to happen because Nick, I'm just like, you're not endgame in my mind.
And I also don't feel like Nick is endgame at this point. But yeah, I think that we both need to maybe mention that we've said it a couple times, or you've said it a couple times about like Cell having trauma is not an excuse for him to be awful to others. That is like Hannah and I complaining about Cell. We're not saying that like people with trauma in their lives are unlovable. We're not saying that at all. That's absolutely not what we're saying. But I think what we're both saying is like he's still terrible to other people, and that's not okay.
And again, like as someone like he gets drunk in these books, it's all ether drunk, so it's not his fault, quote unquote. But it's like, okay, but he's still incredibly abusive when he gets drunk to the point where people cannot be around him. And you and I have been around abusive drunks before. And that's also not okay just because it's tied to trauma. Like the things I did when I was drinking were never okay to do to people. And I have to own that. Like I can say like, I don't think I'm that person anymore. And I want to make a, like, that's why there are certain steps and programs that have amends where it's like, you have to live with the decisions and the things you did. And I hope he has that in these books, because if he doesn't, it's like, well, you're just kind of abusive, and I don't like that. Nick is more insidious in his stuff, because so much of his is and like you and I aren't as critical because we just don't think he's as much of a pertinent love interest. But we'll talk more about this because
there's just not as much there, because it's just like Nick is a very privileged boy who just doesn't seem to have too much going on.
His thing, it's about the second shoe is about to drop, because if we look at him, all the warning signs are there. He comes from a place of privilege. He is never questioned. He is seen as the golden boy. He can do no wrong. He's welcomed back into the fold. He's the prodigal son. He's all these different things. But like the second he felt that Cell overstepped his personal metric for Cell, he punched him. So he answered in violence when he knows that there's a different power differential there that he can't do.
And at this point, it's like, what is going to be the make or break it point for him with Bree? Because obviously Bree has an immense amount of power from her root magic, as well as her ability to manipulate ether. So at what point is she going to cross that line for Nick where he's going to be quick to anger and try to get her either thrown out of the order or fight her or harm her in some way?
And he specifically says like he doesn't really question the regents, so I don't foresee this being good. No. You and I have been reading along with the book, so we have no idea what comes in the third part. Because this book is dense, and we keep thinking because it's a YA novel, we can leave it to the weekend, and we're lying to ourselves. So
it's a lot. We were talking about this, that it's not one of those YA novels that you can just breeze through. There's a lot going on as far as like the fantasy plot of it all, which is super interesting and intricate, but there's also just a lot going on with the character of Bree and all of the emotions that she's taking on and all of the guarding that she is doing for herself. And honestly, I think this is a really great book for them to be teaching in schools.
Oh yeah, I think
teachers should be teaching this a lot.
I mentioned I was going to mention this on the podcast, but this is a book that every time I read it, I just think about quizzes that you could write for this, of like what happened in this section, what happened in this section, where you're like asking and you're like, can you foreshadow what the relationships are going to be or what's going to happen next? Because I feel like there's a ton of foreshadowing. I feel like it's a well-written YA novel that like, yes, is silly in parts with like frontal cortex love interest, but
like you and I are making fun of this, but it's a very well written book. We are enjoying this book a lot. It's just us making fun of the teenage of it all,
right?
Which is extremely realistic.
Yes, and like Tracy Deonn is amazing writer,
great writer,
so well done. So like, I don't want anyone to walk away from this, but like, I do think this would be a great book to
harping on it,
because like it's a great book to learn in school, because then you can also do like Arthurian legend, medieval stuff, like talk about some of the more like legendary things that ties into a bunch of stuff. And it's just a great
I think even like the mentions of hoodoo and like the cultural mentions and the discussions of like statues and things of that nature, like our history within our own country and how we like create monuments and these things, is very interesting to be talking about that with young people, especially.
Yeah.
So
overall, great. I understand why
and
it's
dealing with grief also.
So join us next week as we do finish the book, because Laura, we're finishing the book. There's about
I know what point to get to now.
The final page. We're gonna cover chapters 37 through 58. It is the longest section. It's the most chapters, but the shortest section I feel like we've had to read. So that's helpful. But things are speeding up,
like
guys.
150 pages. So
yeah, like it's the least about it. This is a big chunk of a novel, guys.
Yeah.
So make sure you're following along. Make sure you're checking on our reading schedule for bonus content of what to expect coming up.
Join our Discord.
Join our Discord. It's a great time over there. Join our Patreon. We have a lot of fun stuff going over on Patreon, so make sure you're doing that. And just follow along, rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends about us, tell your friends that we're about to do some more Legendborn. We're about to get into Dresden Files. It's going to be a good
Dresden
year,
Files
everyone.
Are coming. Oh my gosh.
It's coming faster than you think.
Oh my gosh. Cell is in the bushes and so is the Dresden Files. Like
he's over there with Harry. Isn't that the main character's name?
Yeah, it's
Harry
like Harry
something. Harry Dresden.
Copperfield.
Harry Copperfield, sporadic
something Blackfoot something. It's too many names.
Peaches. It's too many names, and he's coming for us with Cell, and they're both going to scream about how we're Shadowborn. So if you guys would like to see that,
and
you should join us next week. All right, all right. Bye.
Bye.